Hello there! Welcome to one of my homes. And this is really amazing because the mobile is being held by the cover of the tree, of a pine tree. So thank you, tree, for filming me, for supporting. Today I bring a fascinating Jataka tale. And I just was in love with this story for many reasons, also from my personal experience of life. And I have chosen to pass the message in this creative way. So here it goes. I'm going to read. Once, the Bodhisattva was born as a deer, and he made his home deep in a lush forest. He was a particular beautiful deer, golden in color, shining like many bright gems, and perfect in any way. His eyes were as blue as sapphires, and even his horns and hooves shone with the luster of precious stones. The Bodhisattva realized his dazzling appearance would make him desirable to men who could capture and kill him, and have his beautiful hide on a wall. So he remained in the thickest parts of the forest, where humans rarely ventured. Because of his wisdom, he gained the respect of other forest creatures. He guided the other animals as their king, and he taught them how to avoid the snares and traps of hunters. One day, the golden deer heard the cries of a man being carried away by the strong rapids in the river. The Bodhisattva responded, crying out in a human voice, "Do not fear!" As he approached the river, it seemed the man was a precious gift brought to him by the waters. The Bodhisattva entered the treacherous current, and bracing himself, he allowed the exhausted man to climb on his back. He carried the man into the safety of the bank and warmed him with his fur. The man stayed with the Bodhisattva, resting and recuperating for a few days. Filled with deep gratitude, he said to the marvelous deer, "No one has ever done anything for me as much as you have done today. My life is yours. What can I do for you?" To this, the Bodhisattva said, "All I ask is that you do not tell other humans about me. If men knew of my existence, they would come to hunt me." So the man promised to keep the deer's secret. Then he began his journey back home. At that time, in that country, there was a queen who saw extraordinary things in her dreams that eventually became real. On that night that the man returned to the city, this queen dreamt of a brilliant golden deer that sparkled like jewels. The deer was standing on a throne surrounded by the royal family and was preaching the Dharma in a human voice. The queen awoke and went to her husband, the king, to tell him this astonishing dream. And she asked him to go and find the deer and bring it to the court. The king trusted his wife's visions and agreed to find the deer. He issued a proclamation to all the hunters of his land to look for the shining golden deer. The person who could bring the deer to the king would receive 1,000 coins, a gold casket, an elephant, beautiful women, and a village of his choice. The man who had been rescued heard that proclamation, and he was greatly conflicted. He was still deeply grateful for the deer, but he was also very poor, and he imagined himself struggling with poverty for the rest of his life. Now, a life of plenty was in his grasp. All he had to do was break his promise to the deer. So, as he continued his journey, he was pushed and pulled by gratitude on one side and desire on the other. Eventually, he told himself that as a healthy man, he could do a lot of good to make up for breaking his promise. Resolved, he went to the king and offered to take him to the deer. The king was delighted. He gathered a large body of soldiers, and they all went out to find the deer. The rescued men guided the entourage over rivers and through forests, and they eventually came to where the unsuspecting deer was grazing. "Your Majesty," the man said, raising his arm to point. The king, in true astonishment, saw the deer, sparkling in the sun like a treasury of jewels. Feeling overcome with the desire to obtain this beautiful creature, he filled an arrow to his bow. The Bodhisattva realized he was surrounded by hunters. Instead of trying to run, he approached the king and addressed him in a human voice. "Stop, mighty prince, and please explain how you found me here." The king, enchanted by this honey voice, put down his bow and pointed to the rescued man with his arrow. And the deer said harshly, "Truly, it is better to take a log out of the flood than to save an ungrateful person from it." The king said, "You speak words of blame. What do you mean?" The deer said, "I do not speak with the desire to blame, Your Majesty. I speak sharply to prevent him from breaking his promise again, just as a physician might apply a harsh remedy to cure his own son. I speak harshly because I rescued this man from danger, and now he brings danger to me." The king turned again to the rescued man. "Is this true?" he asked. And the man, filled with remorse, looked down at the ground and whispered, "Yes." Now the angry king once again filled his arrow to his bow. "Why should this lowest of men live any longer?" he roared. But the Bodhisattva placed himself between the king and he rescued the man. "Stop, Your Majesty," he said. "Do not strike a man who is already stricken." The deer's compassion moved and humbled the king. "Well said, holy being. If you forgive him, so will I." And the king promised to give the man the rich reward he had been promised. Then the golden deer was brought to the capital. The king invited the deer to stand on the throne and teach the Dharma, just as the queen had seen in her dreams. "I believe all the moral laws can be summed this way. Compassion to all creatures," the deer said. "The practice of compassion to all creatures should cause humans to regard all creatures as their own family. If a person regards all creatures as his own family, how can he even think of harming them? For this reason, the sages know that the whole of righteousness is contained in compassion. Great King, keep this in mind and practice compassion to your people, as if they were your sons and daughters, including the rescued man who, thanks to him, I came here to share this message. And in this, your reign will be glorified." The king praised the words of the golden deer, and he and his people took out the practice of compassion to all the creatures with their whole hearts. One beautiful day, the golden deer mysteriously disappeared back into the forest. But the birds and animals were in safety and peace in that kingdom to this day. Iya hey, hey, hey.